mandate discipline.
Read 370 for the time being, that a broad proposition that Article 3 and 4, the provisos can never be suspended in terms of Article 356.
My Lord, the Parliament cannot be, and I'll show the debate when Amit Shah introduced this, my Lord, in the Lok Sabha. Parliament cannot be a substitute for the legislature of the state. It's a very narrow proposition, my Lord. I've been prompted, my Lord, nicely. When Mr. Sibal talked about the political uses and abuses of the Constitution, then Proclamation 19th December, my Lord, is an abuse of the Constitution, and it would be a further abuse of the Constitution if we substitute for legislature Parliament.
Dr. Dhawan, there's difference between existence of power and abuse of power or use of power.
Of course, my Lord.
So let's not confuse the two.
Sorry, my Lord.
There's a difference between existence of power or use of the power or abuse of the power.
No, my Lord.
So let's not.
There is a power, no doubt. Its exercise is equally fundamental. We can't wish away the exercise as being purely nominal in nature. My Lord, when Maharashtra was broken, and the judgments are all there in my written submissions, I'll take your Lordship very fast through them. They said you have to refer whether you like it or not. Likewise, Punjab, my Lord. You have to refer the bill to the legislature of the state. You can't self-refer it to Parliament. And the Constitution says no bill can be introduced, my Lord. It's a complete bar, because we have to understand the limitations of President's rule. And this is one of the important, my Lord, limitations, that during President's rule, you may have the power to do whatever you want in 3.4 and 370. But the process, my Lord, are conditions which can't be substituted by simply saying the governor will now become the president and the legislature will become Parliament. This process of substitution, my Lord, is subversive of the Constitution.
Dr. Dhawan, can Parliament enact a law during the subsistence of a proclamation under Article 356 in exercise of the power under Article 246(2) or in respect of a state list item?
My Lord, they can pass a law, my Lord. No doubt about that, subject to all the limitations that exist.
Right.
Except, my Lord, there is, when it passes a law under Article 3 and 4, it must observe the conditionalities.
In other words, what you're trying to, your argument would be this, that while Parliament can exercise the lawmaking power of the state legislature during the subsistence
with all its limitations.
Yes, with all
the
its
state
limitations.
list comes to them.
The state list comes to them. But certain other functions of the state legislature, namely in terms of the first proviso, to discuss a legislative proposal for altering the boundaries of the state, or under the second proviso for giving consent, that power can't be assumed by Parliament.
Lord,
because then we are creating an exception to the language. I mean, you may possibly argue that you have to create that exception to give a purposive interpretation to that provision. But this one part is very clear, that to accept your argument, we are then creating an exception to 356(1)(b. Because 356(1)(a) says that the powers of the state government are vested in the president or in the governor, as the proclamation would say, other than the powers of the legislature of the state. Then 356(1)(b) says, declare that the powers of the legislature of the state shall be exercisable by or under the authority of Parliament. So we will then, to accept your argument, we have to then hold, of course, maybe by a process of construction, that those powers which are referable to Article 3 and 4, which are powers of the legislature of the state. No doubt they are powers of the legislature of the
The
state.
difference between the legislative powers of the and the consultative and other powers of the legislature. If your lordship will see 357, my lord.
It says declare that the powers of the legislature of the state. Now, which are the powers of the legislature of the state?
Legislative powers.
No, not just the powers under Article 246, but it could be all the powers of the legislature of the state which are vested in the Constitution. Would that be not a more natural construction?
Take your lordships to Article 257, subclause 2. 357. (357)(1), my lord, declares that the powers of the legislature shall be exercisable by or under the authority of Parliament. It shall be competent for Parliament to confer on the President the power of the legislature of the state to make laws and to authorize the President to delegate, subject to such conditions as they may think fit, the power so conferred to any other authority. For Parliament or the President or any other authority in whom such power to make laws is vested under subclause A, to make laws conferring and imposing duties or authorizing the conferring of powers and the imposition of duties upon the union or the officers and authorities thereof. For the President to authorize, when the House of the People is not in session, expenditure from the consolidated fund of the state pending the sanction of such expenditure by Parliament. More important, the Lord, is to any law made in the exercise of power of the legislature by Parliament or the President or other authority referred to in subclause so and so, which Parliament or the President or such authority would not, but for the issue of the proclamation of 356, have been competent to make after the proclamation has ceased to operate, continue in force until altered or repealed or amended by a competent legislature. Which is the competent legislature? So, my lord, even as regards the functions of Parliament, they are specified